I've been an artist for the past 5 years. I started my career when I left business school in 1980. I graduated from Anderson School of Business. I'm 58. I have built 4 companies. I have had 2 successes and 2 failures from a financial perspective. I've had 4 product successes. The 2 successes from a financial perspective were the first 2. The 2 failures were the next 2. And I think the lessons that I wanted to talk about today in terms of building blocks to growth are the things that I learned, really learned, by failing. And it isn't easy to stand up here and say that one fails. And many of my friends and colleagues in the startup world have told me, Louise, you didn't fail. It was just the timing. It was just the market conditions. It was just the other, whatever XYZ reason. But the truth is that at any point in time, we have the ability to make those choices. And I think I was running so hard, and I was so passionate, and so focused on that end goal and that vision, and so determined, and I had such perseverance, that I wasn't able to step back and really look at where I was at any given moment. So the real lesson, the first most important lesson, and what's interesting is I hear myself talk right now, I actually did not know what I was going to focus on when I started this morning. I had about 5 different talks running in my brain as I prepared for this morning. And as I'm standing here this morning, I'm so thankful because this is actually the most important point. This is the most important point, that when you're in the middle of the hurricane or the tornado, because it feels like an emotional hurricane or tornado, because you have your heart and your soul invested in achieving that which you started out to achieve. How do you step back in the middle of that hurricane or tornado or whatever it feels like to you? How do you step back and really look at the situation and make the right choices? So there's a few things that I've learned along the way which do help you in that. The thing that I've learned since I stopped working with my shape, I'm choosing those words right now. I'll tell you just to give you the background of my career so you understand. So in 1980, I graduated from business school. For the first 6 years, I worked in management consulting at Ernst. Ernst is now Ernst & Young. At that time, it was Ernst & Ernst, and then it was Ernst & Winnie. I worked in strategic planning. I worked in financial consulting. I did interesting things like work for the Disney family, evaluating the value, the net worth of the family company, Retlaw, which is a little piece of folklore which many people might not know. Retlaw is Walter spelled backwards. And Walt Disney did something really interesting a long time ago. He decided that his name was worth something, and he established from the very beginning of his company a license fee that went from the parent company to the family. And after he died, and many years later, that was an embarrassingly large cash figure that was being paid to the family every year. So he decided, the company decided they wanted to renegotiate. It was a very friendly negotiation. Ernst was representing the family, so I got to know the family members, and Goldman Sachs was representing the company, and I was preparing the financial model, which helped to evaluate what that was worth. So I got to see the whole Disney enterprise, and that gave me a real understanding of how big businesses get grown. Other kinds of things I worked on were evaluating HMOs. At that time, HMOs were mostly private, and there was a realization in order for them to grow, they needed more capital, and the only way to get them that capital cost effectively was to make them go public. So I was actually the person that negotiated with the state of California to take those HMOs public, so that they could then go public. After that, I, as I say, accidentally became an entrepreneur because I didn't have a job when my husband and I decided to move to Sweden. We moved to Sweden, and I ended up meeting a professor there that wanted to get an education technology company going, and I started a small company there that grew into a couple $1 million of business, and we were doing custom design of interactive computer-based training, what it would be called here, for large Swedish companies like ICA, SKF, Volvo, Ericsson, so forth. And then I came back to the States and got involved with my biggest success, which was Gemstar. And I was the person that convinced TV Guide, the New York Times, and many other newspapers and magazines in the United States, and then rolled it out across Europe, to print the VCR Plus codes. If you remember the VCR Plus numbers in the TV book that helped you program a VCR. At that time, that was the national joke. No one could program a VCR, including President Bush, and the senior, excuse me. And he actually spoke, I remember, after we were a big success, he spoke at the Caltech campus, which was very meaningful for us because 4 of the 6 people that founded Gemstar were Caltech graduates. I was a Caltech graduate also in astronomy, and I did that before I went on to UCLA to join the real world and get my degree in finance and management science. And then I did consulting, and then I did these 2 companies. And after that, I went and I started a company of my own. I took my first dividend check out of Gemstar, which was $200,000, and I plunked it down 100%. First lesson learned, don't put 100% of the money that you earn to any startup, but that's what I did. And I started what was called Enfish. Later, it was originally started as Dex Information Systems. And believe it or not, all these years later, we filed a number of patents. We invented some new database technology. And that technology is still of interest today from a number of organizations. And we'll have to see what happens with that one. The story is not over. And then after Enfish, which unfortunately got stopped by the 2000 crash, we built Enfish as a software for desktop computing, for helping you to organize your information. And we integrated at that time, before the internet had really gotten started, because we started this in 1994. I started it too early in 1994 because the internet hadn't, even though the newspapers had said that we had a huge information overload, the information overload was really happening in the early 2000s. So we had the stock market rise and we had the stock market crash, and then we had the reality of the internet, which is what we're all feeling today. But I was in the earlier period. So the market timing, I think, is something that one has to reflect on. What happened to Enfish was that we were building a very complex piece of software which was using 100% of the bandwidth of the processors in those days. And as a result, we attracted the interest from Intel Corporation. And Intel Corporation decided to fund us because we were going to help them sell Pentium processors. And we were marketed worldwide by Intel Salesforce. That's pretty powerful. So we were able to get the product into, and this is the company that ultimately failed, but this product was able to get into groups within parts of organizations within 2,000 companies. And big companies like, I won't name any names right now, but lots of big companies across aerospace, defense, the government, legal industries, pharmaceutical industries, and so forth. So it had very, very broad application. And from that also comes the next kind of understanding. We had a desktop software product that needed to be an enterprise product. The 2000 crash happened, and so I set aside thinking, I don't want this to end because we're solving a very important information overload problem. The market is still in front of us, it's not behind us. Unfortunately, we started too early, so we have a legacy of having raised too much capital for where we are financially, which is one of the problems that startups get into when they start too early in front of the marketplace. So we had raised $27 million in venture capital over 4 rounds, and we were too early in front of the market with a very deep technology, but no sales base. So I was looking for a corporation, an enterprise company that we could partner with or merge with that would then be able to save the company. So I did what everyone does at that point. I looked at the entire market. I looked at every single company who was selling an internet portal, every single company that had a database, and I started contacting the CEO of all those companies. And as a result, we were able to find one company that was interested, even though it was the crash, the aftermath of the crash in 2000, that was interested in merging with us. So what happened at the end of that? Unfortunately, I was forced to take a life break. I got sick. Sometimes when you're in times of great stress, you get sick. And fortunately, I'm fine. I'm 10 years past the cancer diagnosis, and I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine, and I can recommend cancer support community here in Pasadena. Unfortunately, it's one of those diseases that affects 1 out of 2 of us these days at some point in our life. So it's pretty scary. But it was fine. I just call it 0 on the fun scale. I'm okay. My truth is it's actually the second time. I have one of those genes, which I didn't know at the time, but one of those genes that unfortunately runs in our family. So, but I'm fine, and I expect to be fine. I took a stock of myself while I was going through that, and my executive assistant, Donna Baldwin, came to visit me one day while I was going through the beginning of treatment, and she said, Louise, I said, Donna, I'm bored. She said, Louise, you always talk about textile design. Why didn't you go have some fun, do that? So she told me about FITM, the Fashion Institute downtown Los Angeles. And I literally jumped up off the couch, ran to my computer, looked up FITM, and applied that day to join the textile design program at FITM. And that's what I did. I went and I was the only Caltech grad they'd ever had applying to take their program. I didn't get 100%, but I managed to pass their math test entry into the program. But I didn't pass the drawing. They had to give me remedial drawing classes. But I discovered that anyone can learn to draw. Really, anyone with the right practice and attention can learn to draw. And I spent a year having the most fun. And in the end of that year, I ended up taking a fashion sketching class, which ended up bringing up the idea for MyShape. I know some of my former investors from MyShape are in the room. I just want to thank you because it was the right idea. I still think it could be done. Unfortunately, it again was too early to market. One of the things I did right with MyShape, though, was I brought together a team of really qualified experts from every part of the industry, which I think is the other piece that is so crucial, and it helps you when you're stuck in that tornado. I set about to find experts who really understood the fashion industry. What MyShape was, it was not custom clothing. Everyone thinks it was custom clothing. What it was the eHarmony of fashion shopping online. So we were trying to make shopping easy online. Instead of going to a website, or as you walk into Macy's or into Nordstrom and having no clue what are good clothes for you other than maybe you already know because you've already bought that particular brand and you have certain tastes, we wanted to make it so that when you went online, the only clothes that we showed you were ones that were good for you, meaning they already fit you. They already matched your taste. They already matched your fashion profile, your style preferences, your fit preferences. We wanted to make it so that we would narrow the assortment so it was only good choices for you. And as a result, you'd be more likely to buy. So we were actually trying to replicate in a different way from how you experience it in person, because most people say they won't buy things they've never bought before without seeing them in person. So fashion, everyone thought, would never work online because you had to see it and touch it and feel it and try it on. So we were trying to replicate that experience, but not in the same way, but in a way that would make you trust that what you were buying would work for you. And that part really worked. MyShape changed the shopping online conversion from being a few percent for the people who had personal shops. The online conversion was 17%. That meant, and the in-store conversion for physical shopping is 20%. 1 time out of 5, when you go into a store, you buy something. For MyShape Online, almost 1 out of 5. 17% of the time when you logged into your personal shop, you bought something. And the repeat business was incredible. So what went wrong with MyShape? Well, one thing that went wrong wasn't in my control, the 2008 crash. The 2008 crash sent the valuations of growing e-commerce companies plummeting. Understandably, investors were scared. Everybody was scared. Everybody was terrified. I mean, the underpinnings of all of our retirement and savings was put at risk for everybody. So it was understandable. Valuations dropped. So we ended up in this upside-down situation where we couldn't raise money, enough money, to grow the company to profitability, even though we were only 15 months from profitability. It was the worst situation. We were 15 months from profitability, and I couldn't raise enough money for all kinds of reasons, which is a long story, but couldn't raise enough money to get us to profitability, so I had to do another short round. Worst position to be in as an entrepreneur is to be in a position where you know you're closing money that isn't enough. I'm not sure, looking back, what I should have done, but I do know one thing, and that is that I had already made another mistake, and that was I had listened, with no offense again to the investors in the room. MyShape was a business which was growing steadily, 11 straight quarters of growth. That's why most of my angel investors, who by that time, because we had now venture capital investors from the Bay Area involved in the company, and they weren't day-to-day involved with the business. But I really want to thank the Pasadena Angels and the Tech Coast Angels, because they gave us millions of dollars of funding to support the early years of the company. But we were only, I launched it in 2006. We were the end of 2009 when this happened. So we were 3 years into running it. I had raised the first professional round 1 year into the launch. We launched in October 2006. Spring of 2007, we raised our first Bay Area venture round, and from DFJ Capital. And then A-level VC, fantastic people to work with. Then we did another round the following year from Tenaya Capital, Lehman Brothers, and then we did another round from DFJ Growth. The DFJ Growth round was the one that was too short. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, that if I roll back a year and a half, when I raised the first professional round, the growth was like this. They wanted what? This growth, right? So that they all want. But sometimes there's businesses which are not that growth. MyShape would be a $100 million company today if I had made a different decision. That's my strong belief. It was, or more. It was a this growth company. And we still had some technology to finish before we were ready to go like this. So unfortunately, I raised the money for this kind of growth rate with the reality being this. It doesn't make you a company not worth funding. It just means it's a company that needed a different path to funding than what I was able to make available. So that's another lesson. I think I'm almost ready to close. So I think in summary, I'll say that there are really 5 things that go into making a business successful, a startup successful. I used to summarize them from my Caltech background as P squared M squared P. People, product, money, marketing, and perseverance. And I would just say on the people side, probably the most important lesson is to learn, which I learned since I was no longer with MyShape, is to develop your own inner ability to step back and create that space. And you also get helped with that by bringing in very good advisors and reaching out, and this is the kind of network to take your issues and your situations and your problems and actually openly discuss them. I formed, partway into MyShape and continued on after MyShape, a group called the CEO Circle. They are looking for more members. This is a private, completely private group of CEOs of startup early stage technology companies who get together once a month and discuss their business issues with each other. And there's only 6 to 12 members in the group, so at any one time. So if any of you are interested in that, see me about it. If any of you are interested in mentoring, I'm going to be mentoring on April 1st, April Fool's Day, hopefully, from 10 to 2 over at the new Cross Campus. So I welcome talking with any of you and sharing in more detail any of these experiences, and open to your questions.
Thank you. So we're going to open up to Q&A. I'm going to pass the mic to John. If you have a question, please raise your hand. When you get the microphone, stand up, say your name, what your company is, and ask away. We'll do a few Q&A questions.
Hi, my name is Larry.
Hi, Larry.
I have a college prep and career planning company. Anyway.
I'm sorry, what company?
College prep and career planning.
Oh, great.
Okay. What could you have done different, knowing that what you know now, with the crashes that happened, that it would have made any big difference in the survival of your companies? Is it a matter of, I read the tea leaves wrong, I didn't implement X, Y, Z, or it was unavoidable under the circumstances?
No, I never believe things are unavoidable under the circumstances. I believe that there's always something I could have done differently. Whether it would have come out differently, we don't know. But what I believe is that if I had not, and I guess I didn't finish this point, I'm sorry, sometimes my mind wanders as I'm talking. So what I did in response to the first professional round of venture capital was I was encouraged to bring in the senior team as quickly as possible so that we were ready to then scale. The business wasn't ready yet to fully scale, but I brought in that senior team. And one of the problems with bringing in senior team is they then need their people. So we increased our burn rate by 3, and that was a mistake. That was a mistake I would not do again. So if I had to do it over again when we raised the first round of venture capital, I would have kept the team. I would have added the one person I critically needed. I would not have added the others. And that would have given us bandwidth in life, a longer run line. The biggest mistake you make is by using the money before you can see where the end is. The next step, the next milestone.
Hi, Louise.
Hi, Michael. By the way, Michael is the best copyright trademark attorney in Los Angeles.
That may be somewhat of an overstatement, but
Has helped me for years.
I'll take at least a piece of it.
Also Caltech graduate.
Yes. You spoke of being in the eye of the storm,
Yes.
and it suggests that one has to step back from what are normally the attributes of being an entrepreneur, which is unmitigated,
Unbridled passion.
passion and perseverance
Right.
under difficult circumstances.
Right.
And that means really stepping back from yourself,
Right.
of getting enough view of yourself to let go of the bone that you're chewing on for a while.
Right.
Do you have any experience? You had the unfortunate experience, perhaps, of having cancer and sort of an enforced period of introspection. Do you have any advice for people in general about how to get back from themselves to look more effective?
I do, and it's actually what I've done since I'm no longer at MindShape. The first thing I did after being kicked out of my own company was I went to the Hoffman program. Anyone here know about the Hoffman Institute? It's a fantastic thing. It's something my husband did 2 years earlier and told me about, and I read the book. I thought I got it. But I have to say, after spending 8 days in that program, I had no clue. And at the end of those 8 days, I had a much richer understanding of the forces motivating me personally. And I was able to understand how to take that space, how to create a space between myself and what I was doing into a state of being. It's very bandied around these days, you know, meditation, state of being rather than doing. But it's true. It's really true. And I've developed a personal meditation practice. I've continued to do a lot of retreat work. I've been doing my artwork, which is a personal passion. And in all of these ways, you find yourself. But you need to have something which creates that space to recognize that you aren't what you're due. You know, I always was the same as my companies. I felt my companies were me. They were like children. They're not me. They're just companies. And they're just organizations focused on accomplishing something, not the same as me. And, you know, but me isn't real either. So me's just a collection of stories. Collection of stories I tell myself, depending on the day and the moment and the hour. And that's good to realize, too, is that at any one moment in time, it's just that moment, and it's just whatever you're feeling or thinking. It isn't real, it's just that moment's story. So, yeah, I've learned how to take that space, and I think it's something that everyone can learn. There are many, many ways to do that. I can give you 10 of them. My husband is a connoisseur of all the ways of doing it, and we've been experimenting and learning many of them, so. Another question, yes.
Yeah, I'm David. I'm an
Hi,
artist
David.
and designer. And I was actually interested in listening to your path because it was kind of the opposite of what mine has been, because my whole life was spent from being ankle high, being an artist, all through grad school and most of my professional life. At a certain point, realized, oh my God, I have to start learning about business.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if you can look at what you've been doing and say if there's anything that you learned from all of your years in business that is helping you now as an artist.
Well, I've realized that I am both. That is, I have a left brain and a right brain. And I've been really nurturing my right brain in the last 5 years. And actually building companies is a very creative experience as well. So it's very right brain. But business, the discipline of business, the discipline of execution is also crucial. Having a plan. There's so many entrepreneurs I talked to one recently, who wants help with raising capital, which is something I'm now prepared to help certain companies do. But he didn't have a plan. Oh, he was going to update the plan. Oh, he was going to send it to me in 3 or 4 days. Well, 3 or 4 days passed. Oh, I'm not ready. I want to finish this product thing first. But you have to have a plan at all points in time. I read Michael Dell's book, Direct from Dell, many years ago. He makes those points exquisitely well. I recommend that book to everybody. He makes the point that once you have a plan, it doesn't set up a failure point, it sets up a measurement point. And you understand the difference between the actual and the expected is where you learn from. You look at every difference and you say, why did that difference occur? You don't judge yourself as being bad or good because you have a difference, but you look at that difference and say, what can I learn from that difference?
Hi, Louise, it's Andy.
Hi,
Thank you
Andy.
for coming to speak to us today.
Thank you so much.
Question for you, as innovators and kind of inventors.
Yeah.
When you're on that journey, how do you know if you are about, you're an adventurer, and are you in the abyss and about to fall off the cliff, or are you kind of at the crest of a mountain to discover, the land of milk and honey? Because it's, by definition, you're in new territory. And I always, your struggle,
I love that
are you
question.
crazy or are you like forward looking, right? How do you figure out which, and maybe you're a bit of both?
I love that question. I think that being an entrepreneur is being happy with being in the state of not knowing. The truth is that we are every day, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, every day we're in the state of not knowing. Every day something different can happen. But how do you know? I would say, if you're having to argue with people over and over your point of view and your perspective, and you're not convincing them, and you take that same argument to 5 other people and you're also not convincing them, then it's time to take that space. And take that space and ask yourself this question. And I used to say when I gave speeches some years ago, don't give up, keep going, persevere until you know that no is the right answer. I'm not so sure anymore. That is, I think that sometimes no is the right answer when you're hearing it enough times, and yet perhaps the creativity of being the entrepreneur is that when you have that no, maybe the answer is, if you still feel no is the wrong answer, that there is a way forward, maybe you need to look at a different way forward than instead of pushing the same way forward.
Maybe also filtering who you're getting those no's from.
Oh, sure. I take that without saying. Good point. Yeah.
Well, but Nikki, the other thing is to understand why they're saying no.
Exactly. Excellent point.
That's a huge,
Excellent point.
problem, because what happens is you'll ask, well, in any market you'll have early adopters and they're embracing everything that's cool. And you'll have the skeptics who are saying, it'll never work. Entrepreneurs seldom ask the skeptics, well, why won't it work?
That's
and then
it.
they'll tell you, and then you say, well, why is that? So
No. That's absolutely, and there's another point is seek first to understand. So when someone asks you the question, instead of rebutting it and repelling it, really deeply try to understand. That's your point. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. Yes.
June Davidson, and you
Hi,
said,
June.
hi, dear. And I'm telling you, her business was awesome. I don't know how it failed. And if you could understand that she had a private room that women could go into and do their shopping. No, she did the shopping for them. Your shape was in the room. Everything you liked to wear, including your shoes and carrying your purses, were in the room. And I want to know, you got kicked out. Where is my shape?
Okay. Well, my shape is today, the venture capitalists, they decided that I was not to run the company anymore. They promoted one of my team members to be the CEO and to continue to grow it. Unfortunately, that team member did not continue to grow it, and the company, after having 11 straight quarters of growth, then had 4 consecutive down quarters. And as a result of that, they decided to close it and sell it. So they sold the assets to an Israeli company who is running it today, but they're not running it as a consumer-facing company, they're running it as a B2B company. And they're licensing the technology to large organizations such as Sears and some European organizations. So it is being in use in some way today. I think there are possibilities, some possibilities for the future with my shape, and not with the name my shape.
Yes. I believe that you could go to, they're just getting ready to launch the Points Mall. It's not been launched yet, and there's several malls going on now online where you get points. And I'm heading up the Education and Self-Help Division. I believe you could bring this back in another name on the Points Mall, and I would love to introduce you to the people and see that happen again.
It needs to happen at scale. I'd love to talk to you about that.
Good, thank you.
Let someone else first. Yeah. Anyone else other than Mike?
Somebody else?
Yeah.
Hi, Scott Witt. I'm a local tech exec and a startup coach. So a comment and a question.
Yes.
The first comment is, I think what you're really talking about is the need to test assumptions.
Yeah.
And make really clear assumptions, not just about what your technology can do, which is what most tech entrepreneurs do, is they get really focused on just the vision of the technology, but they get disconnected from the market. And as you described, if the market uptake doesn't match your investment, you're done. It doesn't work. So if anyone's interested, there's a great Harvard Business Review article called Discovery-Driven Planning by Rita McGrath, and you should look it up. You can download it online, and it's a fascinating framework. Very, very good. And she wrote a book called Discovery-Driven Growth that follows that whole thing. So an absolute classic. So now my question to you is, when you're deep inside growing this thing, and again, you've sort of got this technical vision, and I think I've seen this, I'm an engineer myself, actually went to Anderson School too, but so often you see success for a technical entrepreneur is defined as building the product, building the technology, and they lose sight of the feedback that the market is giving them. So having been in that situation several times, where first, the uptake was really good, but maybe the uptake wasn't as good in other times, is there any way for you to be more mindful, if you will, of how to keep checking your assumptions, checking the feedback you're getting, not just from the engineers and sort of the product geeks, but also from the market and everybody else?
Yeah, so
check your momentum.
Maybe I should clarify. One of the things that helps, it's actually a whole other talk that I give, which there was no time to give today. And I think it's probably even more to the point, is the ecosystem that you're launching into. And when I launched Gemstar for VCR Plus, we had partnerships and alliances, and I investigated every aspect of the industry and built those alliances and put them in place. So we had all the major VCR manufacturers, all the major newspapers, magazines, cable companies, even blank tape manufacturers, and TV shows and media that we were partnering with. And that created an ecosystem that all came together to support the product. In particular, we organized the retailers in the local markets to do promotions in the stores and put advertising in the newspapers and magazines carrying the code numbers so that it was all helping each other in a win-win. With MyShape, we ran into an industry problem, and that was the design aesthetic of every designer. There are thousands and thousands of designers, and every designer has their own brand and their own way of wishing to be positioned. And there's a very complex interweaving of which stores can have which designers are willing to be hung next to which designers want to control their marketing message which way. It's why, even after so many years of the internet, Amazon and all the others are doing really a terrible job with fashion. I mean, there is no great fashion shopping site other than going individually to the individual designers or to the stores. I believe there is a way to resolve that, and we were working on that way, but there was a market problem, and that is, as a little company with not enough consumer base, we had no trouble with market uptake from the consumers. We had 800,000 members. We had grown really quickly in membership. We would have already been a $100 million company. The problem with uptake was on the designer side. We didn't have the inventory, so we were disappointing 9 out of 10 members when they initially logged in that first time to their shop, did not have the clothes there they wanted to buy. So once they did that once, they weren't going to come back again. So it was taking us 10 members to get one that matched the assortment we had at that time. So because we're also very early in the internet, most of the designers were not yet online. But that's why today this could be done at scale, because first of all, everyone's online. Secondly, the fashion designers have realized the reality that we've all got to kind of play in this arena. And there are many, many more interactive design tools and ideas and interactive interfaces now and smarts and just tons of technology possibilities now that make things a lot more possible now. We were building our own shopping cart, for God's sake. I mean, we were doing all kinds of things, which now you just buy from Squarespace in 2 seconds. So for $10, which we spent $100,000 on. I mean, we're so much further along on the internet today. So in our case, it wasn't really the market demand. It was the feasibility of bringing the market ecosystem together to realize the opportunity.
It was more of a channel problem.
It was a channel problem.
Right.
That's right.
Going back, and I hope my memory's right, to when you were really initially getting funding for My Shape. I'm thinking in terms of the challenge of putting one's ideas to the test, and particularly with investors.
Yes.
And I remember, I hope correctly, that one of your biggest problems, at least at the earliest stages, was getting men to appreciate what the problem was for buying clothes for women.
Men have a glorious shape, don't they? No, they just buy the size, the neck size and the pant size. But actually,
men have only about 3 variables to deal with in that. And
women have this, which makes another variable. So, and it's a multi-dimensional variable. So, and we also have these, which is another variable, which are less straight and more different shaped. And we have different lengths between our bust and our hip, which also makes the difference in what looks good on us. Yeah, we have a lot more variables.
So what I was
yes,
driving.
But there was another bigger problem, and it was a male problem. But what was the male problem? The male problem was men invest with their gut. They invest emotionally. They invest when, as I say, greed overcomes fear. But they don't understand this problem of women shopping.
They don't have that problem.
Okay? And since, unfortunately, as you can see in this room, most of the investors are men, right? So how are they going to get an answer? They're going to go home and ask their wives, or their daughters, or their sisters. So our challenge was that we knew that our market was 1 out of 2 women. We didn't know which of those 2 his wife was.
I mean,
We were for the women who hated to shop, for the women who got so frustrated at going to every store.
yeah, there are a lot of women who don't like to shop, right? So,
Believe it or not.
yeah.
It's not that they don't like to shop, they hate the experience of shopping. They hate the fact that they can take 8 pairs of jeans into the dressing room, which ostensibly are the same size, ostensibly should fit, and they're completely different.
But I brought that up just for the challenge of convincing somebody
Right.
or of recognizing when a no
Right.
or a failure of appreciation
Right.
is really good feedback or whether the audience is
Right.
wrong that you're
We
talking.
learned a lot from those no's. And yeah, and I think that the venture capitalists did a good job of evaluating our business in understanding, some of them, that it was going to grow more slowly, that it was going to take time to get all the ecosystem in play before the real demand could be met. But, we learned a lot going through it.
I think that's
Sorry.
all the questions. No, thank you. One last question for you. We've got a room full of 80 to 100 innovators here in Pasadena. Thank you so much for the help you've given us. Is there anything that we as a group can do to help you?
Oh, gosh. Well, number one, I have a really beautiful exhibit that's opening on Art Night that supports the cancer support community. It's by an artist, Linda Pica, who was given her life-changing diagnosis 5 years ago, and it's called Past the Expiration Date, because she today is thriving. She threw herself into art and has created this wonderful exhibit. So it opens Art Night, Pasadena Art Night. We're not officially part of Art Night. We're just opening on coincident with Art Night. And it's in my studio gallery, which is 93 East Union. So from 6 to 10, and then you can also see it by appointment after that. It's on the Art Slant website also. So if you want to come see that, that would be great and help support the Pasadena, sorry, what am I thinking? Cancer support community of Pasadena. And then secondly, just I'm looking for interesting companies that I potentially can mentor, consult with, or I have time to sit on some boards. I'm looking for some larger companies because I'd like to really help scale and grow some companies to large companies. If you know of any opportunities like that, I'd be interested in hearing. Thank you very much.
Let me get a picture of you.
Oh.
This is my favorite part. All right, everybody, let's make some amazing faces. Your marks, get set, go.